This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. So they trotted out the entire national security kick line yesterday to address the D.C. press corps. Tell Jim Acosta he's not an enemy of the people. You have to do that first. And then actually talk about something important and substantive that was sort of buried with all of the Sarah Sanders, Jim Acosta, Trump rally stuff. But Dan Coats talking about Russian efforts to interfere in the November of 2018, the upcoming election. Coats saying POTUS directed them accordingly.
The president has specifically directed us to make the matter of the election meddling and securing our election process a top priority, and we have done that and are doing that and will continue to do so. In regards to Russian involvement in the midterm elections, we continue to see a pervasive messaging campaign by Russia to try to weaken and divide the United States. These efforts are not exclusive to this election or future elections, but certainly cover issues relevant to the election. We also know the Russians try to hack into and steal information from candidates and government officials alike.
And that the Russians may not be alone.
We are aware that Russia is not the only country that has an interest in trying to influence our domestic political environment. We know there are others who have the capability and may be considering influence activities. As such, we will continue to monitor and warn of any such efforts.
And so who are they targeting, DNI Coats?
Current 2018 efforts. Is there any particular party that is benefiting from current 2018 Russian efforts?
What we see is the Russians are looking for every opportunity, regardless of party, regardless of whether or not it applies to the election, to continue their pervasive efforts to undermine our fundamental values.
For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined again by our friend Bret Baier, Fox News anchor, special report, 5 p.m. Chicago time, weekdays, and also the author of the new book, 3 Days in Moscow, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of the Soviet Empire. Bret, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
So that was quite a retinue they put together of directors of national security and intelligence agencies to address this topic of security, essentially, with respect to the 2018 election.
Yeah, I think that was part of the message, was to show everybody was singing from the same sheet of music when it came to this effort. There's been a lot of criticism on Capitol Hill that the administration hasn't done enough or that they should do more. And I think this was part of the show. You know, there are critics who say it was great to see that unity, forcefulness, and all of the statements. Democracy is in the crosshairs and other things, but obviously it's not the president saying it, and that's, where critics would say he hasn't gone far enough himself.
The same critics who think he's a Russian agent.
That's true. There are many critics.
Well, yeah, but a lot of people said it.
Flavors.
Yeah, it was another opportunity missed for him not to be present for this very important press conference. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think they made clear that he told them to do this. He empowered them to get together and do it. And, I think, his focus is clearly, to try to stop this. I do think it's interesting that it's not just Russia.
Yeah.
And those same critics, were really jumping on the president for saying Russia and others. And listen, Iran, China, other groups that are not state actors are also, according to them, a factor.
With respect to the press this week, since that's, again, another week dominated by the press's navel-gazing, in some respects at least, Jim Acosta yesterday demanding that Sarah Sanders say, Jim, you're not an enemy of the people because he deserves that, and Sarah Sanders recounting just what has occurred to her personally, as well as how the press has covered this administration, and suggesting that Jim Acosta and perhaps others deserve something else. Where do you come down on some of this overheated rhetoric coming from both sides about the Fourth Estate? I mean, do you see the president as really attacking the idea of a free press, or is he just sort of manipulating the press in the kind of in an us versus them for political advantage?
I think the latter. This president is different than the other president, and he has clearly chosen this to stir up his base. Does it help the overall tone for the country to do that at a rally and then spur people on to kind of yell at Acosta as he's doing a report? No. Are we the enemy of the people? No. Is the outrage machine at number 11 every single day for every tweet or everything that happens? So then people, they get so outraged, then there's a reaction to the outrage, and then it sucks up all of this oxygen through the day. Meanwhile, there's a ton of stuff happening, substantive stuff that we could be reporting on dispassionately. But the emotion meter gets to a really hot level.
Now, we had Tim Carney on last hour who said something I thought very poignant. He said none of this, victimization of journalists was going on before they started having live coverage of the White House press briefing. Do you believe that to be true, too?
That has turned into a show.
It's turned into a show, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of that. I tend to agree. I mean, I'm an advocate for leaving it the way it is, but I agree they're playing to the camera, and you see this in congressional hearings too, hearings where they could get real answers to real questions, end up being speechified moments so that lawmakers can make a message that gets picked up back home.
What are you hearing from your friends on the Hill about where Republicans think they are in advance of the midterms with just over 3 months to go? And I say this against the backdrop of yet another Republican incumbent congressperson, Diane Black in Tennessee, losing a play to level up to statewide office. This on the heels of Rokita and Messer losing in Indiana and Labrador losing in Idaho, and Mark Sanford and Pittenger going down as well in South Carolina and North Carolina, respectively. Seems like at least in the Republican primary, there's some antagonism towards even conservative incumbent House Republicans, and you wonder how that translates in terms of turnout in November.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of time between now and then. I think if the election was held today, most people believe the House would go to the Democrats, maybe by a small margin, and then the Senate would stay in Republican hands and maybe even increase Republican seats. I saw this or heard this stat the other day that if Democrats won every congressional district that Hillary Clinton won, or every congressional district where she lost by 8 points or less, so Democrats win all of those congressional districts, they would win the House by something like 20-plus seats. That same turnout, with those same numbers, they would still lose the Senate.
Wow.
So that's pretty telling.
Yeah. That's pretty telling about how where the Senate is and the opportunities, frankly, for Republicans to expand their majority in the Senate.
Exactly.
So former Vice President Joe Biden, I noticed, was at a bakery the other day with former President Barack Obama. Is he the guy that they're going to lean on in 2020?
It's hard to believe, but it's leaning. It looks like it's heading that way. I think for all the talk about the split in the Republican Party, though, the Democratic Party has a big split too. I mean, the rock star Ocasio-Cortez in New York, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. I mean, that's where the passion of the Democratic Party is on the progressive side. I think that the establishment Democrats are leaning on Joe Biden as a possible contender.
All right. So this big news as well, too, and so the bread and circuses beat. Thanksgiving, $10 million mano-a-mano, Tiger versus Phil.
So excited.
I'm going to watch just because Phil's going to be mic'd up, so I'm looking for stock tips. But I don't know. I like this, going back to like the old Skins games when they used to have Nicholas and Player and Palmer and Ray Floyd and Skins games. What do you think? You're a golfer.
I
avid.
love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm going to watch, of course. I mean, it's the matchup that every major we all had hoped for. This way they create their own major, and maybe it's a little bit more relaxed. But I think it's great. They're both playing pretty well, so it'd be fun to watch.
How are you playing? What are you playing at right now?
I am down to a 3.
You're a 3?
3?
All right.
Congratulations.
All right.
Dan, what are you?
I'm a giving 3. I'm a walking wallet.
That's good. I'm
What are you?
I'm my index.
Besides angry at yourself.
Well, yeah, I'm a 5'7", so you got to give me 3 shots, and and let's.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
and the $2 Nassau is at the window.
Wait.
Hand it over.
$2 Nassau. I want to play for the book royalties from 3 Days in Moscow. Can we do that? Bret Baier, Fox News anchor, special report, 5 p.m. Chicago time. Weekdays, the book, 3 Days in Moscow, Ronald Reagan and the Fall of the Soviet Empire. Bret, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
There's only one